Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Levy. Welcome to my office in Dallas, Texas. It is July 1st, 2020, hopefully at the end of the COVID cycle. An interesting year it has been for all of us. I hope this video finds you in a good, happy, healthy, successful place, and that we can look back as this interesting period of history. Today, I'm going to share a little information about employee engagement and the value and impact that an engaged population can have on business outcomes. Interesting observation over the 18 years as the CEO of Online Rewards has been that discretionary effort is a powerful asset if you can get your employees to exhibit that. This slide is a great summary of the discretionary effort model. Talks about two employees, Jim and John. Both of them are basically the same, all things considered, but one of them applies their discretionary effort. One of them each day comes to work with a view that says, I like my job. I'm proud of the work that I do. I like the work that I do. People appreciate me. I want to give my best. And the relative impacts and outcomes on business is substantial. According to a study by Harvard Business Review and Price Waterhouse, for those businesses that have a population that are engaged, where the employees can be effectively defined as proud of their work and proud of the company, 90% of them saw their growth and profits at or above industry levels. And at those same companies, 65% of the employees said they were passionate about their work. So the question becomes, how do you build a culture and an environment and an atmosphere? And I think every CEO's responsibility is to do this. How do you build a culture where individuals feel proud of the work and contributions, no matter whether they be the janitor, whether they be the back office business processor, whether they be the note taker, or whether they be the senior executive leaders? They should be proud of their work, and they should all be proud of their company. So rather than hear from me, I like to bring some people with a lot more expertise and experience in dealing with the corporate commercial side of that. And so today I've brought a very interesting gentleman to come and share his perspective, knowledge, and expertise, Michael Rhodes. Michael is somebody that I've known from many years. He has a background in roles at KPMG, Arthur Andersen, and Aon. He's often in the media and press. He's written a number of books recognizing performance, A Guide to Non-Cash Reward and Reward Management. Without further ado, I'd like to pass this over to Mike Rhodes to share some of his knowledge and expertise around building engagement in the workplace using non-monetary, non-cash components. Over to you, Mike.
Thanks very much indeed, Michael. Well, I'll be speaking today drawing from some of the experience that Michael's just referred to, and of course a lot of research for the books that I've done. And I just want to make 3 points today. The first is the level of employee engagement affects organizational success. It's a critical point. It's one that Michael's alluded to. The second is that recognition is a particularly powerful driver of engagement. And thirdly is that recognition can do things that cash just can't do, and can have a huge impact over and above other drivers. And so let's talk about engagement first. Well, 86% of employers in the UK from a recent survey measure engagement, so it's seen as important. And why is it seen as important? Well, here's some data from the Gallup organization. They've done a huge amount of research on this subject, and I've just pulled out three pieces of data. The first is that engaged employees have something like 27% less absenteeism. There is typically something like 12% higher customer satisfaction. And at an organizational level, engaged organizations can outperform their opposition by some 18 points on their EPS. So engagement is important, it's significant, and it has huge potential impact. So what are the top drivers of engagement if it is so important? What should we be looking at? Well, there's lots of survey data on this. I've just pulled out a recent survey this year, and it gave the information you can see there. Opportunities for learning and development was the first. Link between work and company strategy, second. And that's a very interesting one. It refers really to some of the things that Michael was just talking about around purpose and people having an understanding of the relationship between what they do and the organization. recognition for good work, the one I want to talk about, confidence in senior leaders and managers who help employees. And these are all very important, and maybe if we can get all of those right, we'd have engaged employees. So, but why am I particularly talking about recognition? Well, the first is the point I've already made. It can be one of the most, and sometimes the most important driver of engagement. And at this time, it's particularly important because younger people coming into the market, into the job market for some time actually, demand more recognition, feedback. They want to know how they're doing, they want to grow, and they want to develop. Recognition can deliver much greater change with lower cost than cash. It can do things cash just can't do, and I'll give you an example of that in a moment. And it's actually pretty simple to coach and simple to implement. So what is recognition? Well, the simplest definition is to catch people doing something right. And that's really because we are pretty hardwired to catch people doing something wrong. So that's when we're talking about recognition. Let's catch people doing something right. And another way to look at it is what happens if we have the absence of recognition when it's needed. Well, look at this piece of research. So this was from something done a little while ago by some colleagues. And here's an individual who is saying, look, we did a lot of work. A lot of us helped out the organization. We didn't even get any thanks. Now, Susan is not asking for a bonus. She's not asking for a salary increase. She's just asking for acknowledgement and recognition of the great things she and her colleagues did to help out the organization. And that's a very interesting relationship, isn't it? That here we are, organizations may often look at the cash component and see that as a driver, but here's an example where it's not. And in fact, there's more research on that subject as well. McKinsey did some research and look what they showed. They found that praise from immediate manager, leadership attention, both absolutely about recognition and the chance to lead projects, can be more than or at least equal to these other cash components as far as motivation is concerned. So engagement is a critical component and recognition is a critical driver of engagement. So how do we set about thinking about recognition in the organization? Well, I think a useful way to consider it is as a journey or a continuum. And really it runs from the very informal to the formal. And as you can see, the suggestion I make here is that the informal can cost little or nothing. The formal can end up costing quite a lot. And at the informal end, we really have the day-to-day. This is just the thanks. This is really what Susan in the example just there was asking for. Just thanks for what we were doing. And I'm sure all of us know plenty of times where we've done stuff and we just weren't thanked for it. It may be it's most typically face-to-face for has been, and now it's turning a little bit more to technology, and sometimes it's going to be online, but face-to-face can be important. When we get to the slightly more formalized, but still local, informal, low-key stuff, that's more about sharing with others. It's making it public. It's almost certainly going to be using technology nowadays to disseminate that around the organization. But it is still about recognizing the great thing the person or sometimes team has done. This is also the point at which it's quite common to bring non-cash components in to reinforce the message. It is, let me just clarify, the message that's important, but some form of award can have a significant impact on reinforcing that. And then finally, we could get to the much more formal, the Employee of the Year award, the big high-profile event. Now, I suggest that you should start here, the day-to-day, but interestingly, many organizations start at the other end and they think, let's do recognition, we'll implement a big program and that will do it. I believe that's wrong. You may build up to that. Many organizations have lots of different recognition of programs. Hopefully they link together, but it's about the behavioral change, which is really starting on the left-hand side and then building up as appropriate. Well, I've mentioned the use of non-cash, and that's a particular thing we wanted to talk about today. And so let me give you some examples of why, or reasons why I think non-cash is particularly important when we're talking about recognition. Well, the first left-hand side, perceived value. The perceived value of a gift, a tangible gift, can be much higher than the money, which is probably just lost in other things. And in fact, it can also be much more personal. The gift chosen for the individual, or maybe the individual is able to choose themselves a gift. display. You wouldn't talk to your neighbors or friends about your last bonus check, but you certainly might share with them a non-cash award that you received from your organization for doing a great job and tell the story about it. And that reflects well on you, and it reflects well on the organization. Memory value. Um, People will have forgotten their last bonus, they'll have forgotten the last salary award, but they're less likely to forget an interesting award that they got, a non-cash award or an experience that they got from doing some great piece of work. And so it has much more memory value. And the final thing is differentiation, and that is that cash is normally used for the contractual arrangements around bonuses and salary. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the gift of praise and acknowledgement and recognition. And so it's important to differentiate for everybody, the recipients and the givers, that we're not talking about incentives, we're not talking about targets, we're talking about the recognizing the great things people do. And therefore not using cash, but using non-cash can strongly help that. Now, let me give you an example now of what are the things that recognition can do that cash just can't, and that's around creativity and innovation. And you just can't financially incentivize creativity and innovation. In fact, research suggests you'll damage it. But, and here's a piece of research fairly recently, if you are recognizing people for the great stuff they're doing, as you'll see, something like 33% of people are more likely to be proactively innovating and coming up with more ideas. So creativity and innovation is, at the moment, particularly a really critical component for most organizations. But you can't cash incentivize, but you can recognize and build from the great things people are doing. Now, if you are seeing creativity and innovation as important, then no doubt you're going to have to ensure you have a no blame culture, because you need people to be pushing boundaries to be able to really be creative. And how can you manage that within recognition? Well, here's something that you can do that's really quite interesting. I know one organization, they have a Dare to Try award. So it's actually recognizing something that was tried but failed. And it's acknowledging that if we don't celebrate to some extent the failures, because where people have pushed boundaries and really come up with a great idea, but for whatever reason it didn't work, then we're never going to be as inventive as we should be. So some kind of certificate for failure can be amazing. So finally, before I pass back to Michael, in summary, so recognition is, as a point I've made a number of times, a very powerful driver of engagement. It can have a huge impact on change compared to its cost. You can enhance it substantially by using non-cash awards, and technology can be a material enabler of recognition. So with that, let me pass back to Michael Levy.
Thank you, Mike Rose. Appreciate you taking the time. It is wonderful for someone who has been on the inside of the industry from a standpoint of the development of programs to have someone that is coming from the total rewards and comp perspective, looking at this and saying, look, this can have meaning and impact. This is something that should be looked at. This is something that if one has an agenda and an objective to say, I'm trying to maximize the performance and productivity of my human resources, and I'm trying to build a culture that inspires them to give their best, the discretionary effort, it is somewhat a compensation consideration, because compensation certainly has, the largest and biggest budgets. The question is, how are they looking at using and applying their tools to build the business outcomes? So as far as online rewards and our Work Proud service is concerned, we've been doing this for 18 years, self-promotion, fine, fair enough. Our view and vision on this is, how do you make people proud of your work, proud of their work and proud of the company? Well, recognition is a key enabler to producing and providing a sense of pride that allows the janitor or the teacher or the nurse or the manufacturing plant operator all the way up to get a sense that people appreciate them. As Oprah Winfrey so wonderfully stated in a brief summary, she said, Every person that I interview, no matter whether that be the Bushes or Obama or Beyonce or the firefighters, always when the microphone is put down says, how did I go? We're all individually looking for a sense of validation. If we are told that we're doing well, particularly by our peers, particularly by our managers, then that's telling us something that we're doing a good job. So as a service, we are building for clients and have since 2002 built some 450 different programs, all customized to the client needs. So if you ever have an interest in looking and exploring that, we'd of course be very happy to help show you some of our expertise and capabilities. I'll highlight two brief case studies that I think are worth mentioning. Two fantastic, great companies, different situations and how they've approached it and their outcomes. GABLES Residential, US big apartment complex operators, very dispersed population, small groups working and running apartment complexes. How do you, if you have a large population of employees that are separated, working remotely, I'm sure everybody understands that now, how do you build a sense of connectivity amongst them all? How do you engage them and inspire them to give their best when you can't see them, when you don't know what they're doing? Historically, GABLES used to have a once a year big annual formal award, just like Michael was talking about before. A lot of money, a lot of research, a lot of hoopla, once a year, some 10% of the population being recognized. Not really sure why they were getting recognized. They pivoted and moved to a daily, more frequent recognition program whereby people were being appreciated by their peers and by their managers on an ongoing basis. And they still had some level of formal annual event, but they just repivoted the money, significant increase in impact. 90% of employees feel that they have now a sense of culture and appreciation at GABLES. Previously, they did not find that. So here's another case study client. Macy's, a large US retailer. Their situation was having multiple small programs. They had one group in HR running something to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries, another group running store level employee recognition using, cards that would be handed in. They had a very formalized nomination process where once a year they would celebrate some individuals. They had something for coaching. And as we went through the process and talking with Macy's and their employees, it became somewhat clear that while the programs individually were all very important to the people that were running them, we weren't really sure that the employees actually knew about the programs or how they kind of connected to the bigger vision of what it meant to be at Macy's. But of course, the programs were all intended to create an employee experience that was inspiring and made people feel recognized and appreciated for their work and contributions. So working with some great folks at the Macy's team, we brought all the programs together under a common platform and umbrella, taking all the best parts of what they used to do, unifying them under a common framework, integrating it with their HRIS systems, and the net results were not just a cost reduction, but an improved impact on the employee experience as measured by a 12% increase in engagement scores linked to utilizations of the program, and some 20,000 recognition activities were taking place per month, whereas historically they may have had a few hundred. So overall, Online Rewards is in the business of saying, hey, make your employees proud of the work, proud of the company, and those employees will give of their best. And we've been doing this for quite some time. And as you can see on the page, with some pretty impressive clients, and we certainly appreciate the faith and confidence that each of these clients has had in us. And we'd love to help you if you had any further interest. So at the final conclusion of today, I'd like to say, firstly, thank you, Michael Rose, for your time, your contributions. Michael Rose's contact details are above. My contact details are below. We appreciate you all for spending the time and listening to us today. And I wish you, your families, and your workplace environment all the best in health, happiness, and success, not just for 2020, but in the years ahead. Thank you very much for taking your time today.